On July 9th, 1962, the United States government declared war on the sky. At exactly 11 p.m., the night turned into day. Hotels in Hawaii were shaken by a silent earthquake. Tourists on Waikiki Beach looked up and saw the impossible. The sky didn't just light up, it burned. A blood-red aurora erupted out of the darkness, tearing through the stars. It was followed by streaks of violent green and purple, stretching from the horizon to the zenith. It looked like a hole had been punched in reality. People froze. Some thought it was a volcanic eruption. Some thought it was the start of World War III. Some thought it was the end of the world. They were wrong. It wasn't the end of the world. It was a science experiment. It was Operation Starfish Prime, the night we detonated a 1.4 megaton hydrogen bomb in outer space, just to see what would happen. And what happened terrified scientists for decades. To understand this madness, you have to understand the fear of 1962. The Cold War was at its absolute peak. The Soviet Union had just shocked the West by launching Sputnik, the first artificial satellite. For the first time in human history, the enemy wasn't just across the ocean, they were overhead. Paranoia wasn't just a mood, it was policy. The United States military was desperate. They needed to know if they could use nuclear weapons not just to destroy cities, but to destroy the sky itself. They asked a terrifying question. If the Soviets launch a missile at us, can we intercept it with a wall of nuclear fire? Can we turn the upper atmosphere into a shield of radiation that nothing can survive? Enter James Van Allen. Only a few years earlier, this brilliant physicist had discovered something invisible surrounding our planet. He found that Earth is wrapped in giant donuts of high-energy charged particles, trapped by our magnetic field. We call them the Van Allen radiation belts. To a scientist, these belts were a wonder of nature. They were a protective shield that blocked solar wind. But to the military, they looked like a weapon. The generals looked at Van Allen's discovery and wondered, what happens if we inject a nuclear bomb directly into those belts? Could we supercharge them? Could we create a barrier so radioactive that no Soviet missile and no Soviet satellite could ever pass through it? They called it Project Fishbowl, a series of high-altitude nuclear tests designed to turn the vacuum of space into a laboratory of destruction. And the crown jewel of this project was a test codenamed Starfish Prime. The plan was simple and completely insane. They would launch a Thor rocket from Johnston Island, a tiny, isolated atoll in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. The rocket would carry a W-49 thermonuclear warhead, a bomb 100 times more powerful than the one that destroyed Hiroshima. The target altitude was 250 miles, straight up into the vacuum of low Earth orbit. Now, you have to understand the physics here. When a nuclear bomb explodes on Earth, the atmosphere pushes back. The air resistance creates the famous mushroom cloud and the shock wave. But in space, there is no air. There is no resistance. There is no mushroom cloud. Scientists predicted that without an atmosphere to contain it, the explosion would be perfectly spherical, a rapidly expanding bubble of plasma and X-rays. But they didn't know how big it would get, and they didn't know what it would do to the magnetic field holding our planet together. On that humid night in July, the countdown began. 3, 2, 1. The Thor rocket roared into the dark, climbing on a pillar of fire. It pierced the clouds, it pierced the stratosphere, it entered the silent black void of space. At exactly 11 p.m., 13 minutes after launch, the warhead detonated. The result broke the sky. A flash of white light flooded the Pacific, so bright it was visible from the equator to the Arctic. But it wasn't just light. The bomb released a massive flood of beta particles, high-energy electrons moving at near the speed of light. These particles didn't just dissipate into the void, they grabbed onto Earth's magnetic field lines like cars grabbing onto a highway. They raced along these invisible lines, spiraling down toward the North and South poles. As they slammed into the atmosphere, they ignited the air molecules. Instantly, the sky over the Pacific erupted into artificial auroras. But these weren't the soft, natural lights of the north. These were violent, jagged streams of red, green, and neon purple stretched for thousands of miles across the ocean. It was beautiful. It was terrifying. It was a light show no human was ever supposed to see. But on the ground in Hawaii, 900 miles away, the beauty turned into confusion. Suddenly, streetlights in Honolulu began to pop and go dark. Burglar alarms across the island started screaming. Telephone microwave links fried. Radio stations went dead. The scientists had missed something massive. They knew the bomb would create radiation, but they underestimated the electromagnetic pulse, or EMP. The explosion had shoved the Earth's magnetic field so violently that it sent a massive electrical surge traveling through the ionosphere. It hit Hawaii like a hammer. The bomb didn't just light up the sky. It physically attacked the electrical grid of an island chain nearly 1,000 miles away. For a moment, it seemed like a prank, a strange phenomenon. But the real disaster wasn't happening on the ground. It was happening in orbit. In 1962, the space age was just beginning. There were only a handful of satellites in orbit. These were fragile, primitive machines, the cutting edge of human technology. Among them was Telstar 1. Telstar was a celebrity. It was the first satellite capable of relaying live television signals across the Atlantic Ocean. It was the symbol of the future. It was the proof that humanity could connect itself through the stars. But Starfish Prime had just turned low Earth orbit into a kill zone. The explosion injected massive amounts of extra radiation into the Van Allen belts. The scientists expected these particles to dissipate within a few weeks. They thought the belts would flush themselves out. They were wrong. The radiation didn't leave. It got trapped. The bomb created a new, artificial radiation belt that hugged the Earth with the grip of a vice. As Telstar 1 orbited the planet, it had to pass through this new zone of death. Every time it flew through the Starfish belt, the high-energy electrons hammered its solar panels. They cooked its transistors. They degraded its command channels. It wasn't instant. It was a slow, silent poisoning. Day by day, the satellite began to fail. The television signals became fuzzy. The commands stopped working. Within months, Telstar 1, the pride of humanity, was dead. It wasn't alone. Ariel 1, the first British satellite, died. Transit 4, a US Navy navigation satellite, died. In total, the Starfish Prime test destroyed or damaged 1/3 of all active satellites in low Earth orbit. We had nuked our own fleet. We had turned the near-Earth environment into a graveyard. The scientific community was horrified. Astronomers watched in dismay as the artificial radiation belt lingered. It didn't vanish in weeks. It stayed for years. For the next decade, the remnants of that one explosion interfered with scientific measurements. We had vandalized our own atmosphere. It was a wake-up call. The governments of the world realized that space was not a limitless void where they could do whatever they wanted. It was a fragile membrane. It was a shared environment. And they realized that if they kept detonating bombs up there, they would eventually lock humanity on the surface of the Earth forever. In 1963, less than a year after the test, the United States and the Soviet Union signed the Partial Nuclear Test Ban Treaty. It banned nuclear detonations in the atmosphere, underwater, and in outer space. Operation Fishbowl was over. The sky was safe again. For decades, Starfish Prime faded into history. A Cold War curiosity, a forgotten mistake. But the story doesn't end there. Because today, the threat is larger than it was in 1962. Back then, we only had a few dozen satellites. Losing them was an annoyance. Today, we have thousands. Our entire civilization relies on low Earth orbit. Your GPS relies on it. Your banking system relies on it. If a rogue nation or a desperate superpower decided to detonate a nuclear weapon in space today, The result would not be a few broken satellites. It would be a global catastrophe. The EMP would collapse the power grids of entire continents in seconds. The radiation belt would wipe out the GPS constellation within weeks. Air traffic would halt. Financial markets would vanish. The internet would go dark. We have built a civilization that stands on a glass floor orbiting 200 miles above our heads, and we know exactly how easy it is to shatter it. 1962 proved that even in space, mistakes don't stay contained. It showed us the terrifying power of our own hubris. It showed us that we have the power to touch the stars and the power to burn them. We learned a valuable lesson that night. The sky is not empty. It is not a testing ground. It is part of our home. And if you punch it, it punches back. 1962 proved that once. Next time, it won't be a test.